So I decided to move to Honduras the next year. I decided because I had this investment banking job in
Yeah.
hand. I had a signing bonus. I could do, I could have done whatever I wanted, and I just thank God he caught my heart. I didn't even believe in him at that point, and I didn't, and I wasn't doing any of this like for spiritual reasons or for God. I was doing it, man, and it even impacts me now thinking about saying it. There's hungry kids, there are people just there are people whose lives are not going to be anything near what they could have been. And like, that's worth a fight.
Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome to the KondoSpeaks podcast, and welcome to Life Stories powered by Lifesong. Lifesong thankfully gives us the excuse to do something we love to do, which is shine a spotlight on some of the unsung heroes in our world, tell some of the unheard stories of ordinary people like you and me making an extraordinary difference in the world, especially in the lives of hurting people around us. And today I have one such hero. Riley Fuller is with us, and we could not be more thankful to have him. Riley, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you, Kondo. I'm excited to be here. Never been called a hero before, but I'll take it.
Yeah, man, accept it, embrace it, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But okay, so we both live in Indiana. At least we claim this as home, family, and yet as much as we've heard about each other, today is the first day that we are actually getting to meet. I've got to say, man, in front of all of these people, it is really good to hear you've heard so many incredible things about you.
Likewise, Kondo. It's great to meet you. It's surprising in a town this small that we haven't
Yeah,
met yet, but today's the day.
very true. Okay, you are all of the big names. You are the founder, you are the president, CEO, you're the leader, you're the champion of this incredible movement, Humanity and Hope United, which serves the underserved in Honduras. And I'm just telling you right now, the minute we lay those titles out, it's going to do what you'd expect it to do. You are making an incredible difference in the stories of so many people, and folks are going to hear that and they're going to be like, oh, so he's one of those difference makers, which indeed you are. And part of the reason for this conversation is to take away the excuses for the rest of us who are like, okay, so you're special. Thank you for what you're doing. We can't do anything to make a difference. And I just thought, all right, you're doing some incredible things in our world, but that's not always been the story. Your story starts in a very, very fascinating place. You were born and raised in a pretty small town, Indiana. First of all, how do you feel about that? Are you thankful to have been raised in a small town? Did it feel like a prison you had to get out of? What was the beginning like?
Um, I feel like one of the most interesting lessons in life is to learn that one thing can be considered multiple different ways.
Mm,
So for me, my growing up at the time, I love Warsaw. I love Warsaw deeply. I still think about Warsaw often, but I knew from the age of, I'm not kidding, probably my earliest consciousness, 4 or 5 years old, that there was going to be at least a long season of my life where I didn't live in Warsaw. And so,
really?
yeah, I've always kind of gotten these feelings or visions or like
Mm,
downloads to the heart, and that was just
wow.
and that was one of them. So I just knew, and we had a family business, but I knew that I wasn't probably gonna end up here.
And that's incredible, especially because it's typically the opposite. Small town folks tend to stay in a small town for generations and generations. But I've got to pause and say there is something special about this place. And for those of you listening, look it up. Like there is such rich history and heritage spiritually of this being such a launch pad for people to head on out and do some incredible things around the world. We claim Billy Graham as one of those who had a major start here in the Warsaw, Winona Lake area. But so you were born, raised in this area, and then soccer. Like you were a soccer stud. I remember hearing some of that about you, and some of your dreams were about, man, making it in the soccer world. And so you go to college, you're playing soccer there. What led you to the college you ended up playing at?
Yeah. Well, so one of the values I learned in Warsaw is hard work.
Mm,
Um, and that's why, looking back at Warsaw from the perspective I have now, I was immature when I was a kid. Now that I've grown up, the my inner person was formed by Warsaw,
mm.
and thankfully, I love the values that make me me. So I love Warsaw. Um, I would say my college story. I was a hard worker. I really wanted to be an athlete. I really wanted to be a
Yeah.
basketball player. And so I worked on that constantly as a kid. All I did was go on the boat and play basketball. It was an idea, like it was really
Welcome to
one of
Indiana.
the best
Yeah.
childhoods I could imagine. But I didn't get a basketball scholarship. I got a soccer scholarship. So I was going to go to a school in South Carolina, and then I decided to take off basketball season. I was like, all right, I'm getting a soccer scholarship. I don't need to play my last year of basketball. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever had some downtime. I got a girlfriend for the serious girlfriend for the first time. Ended up giving up my Division I scholarship for the
For
girlfriend,
love.
for love, for not love,
Not love. But then,
for the hope of love,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe. And so I ended up, I was going to go to a D1 school in South
Mm.
Carolina. I ended up going to a D3 school here in Indiana, and followed that girl. Did not
And
work out.
it, as it sometimes tends not to, and yet, man, so thankful the Lord uses things like that. So you end up at this school and you are crushing it. I mean, you are playing at such a high level. You were given a leadership role on the team. Things are going incredibly well, especially on the soccer pitch. But man, you've been pretty open with some of the darker elements of your story that have lurked and that were lurking in the background. And I think it's so incredible. Again, for the person who's like, okay, so you're one of those special ones, flawless in every way, anointed by God. The angels came and revealed themselves to you early. We could never do what you do. And yet, you're in college playing soccer, but behind the scenes, there's some wrestling going on. I don't know if you'd be willing to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. So I told you a little bit. My childhood was amazing. 10 out of 10. Um, Great family, tons of fun, purpose, values, goals,
Yeah.
resources, all of it. Um, but what I've realized is that my story doesn't start with me. You know, my story started a long time before I started, and there's a lot of difficult history in my family. Um, like for example, I'm just gonna try to be as open as I can here
Man,
and trust the Holy
absolutely.
Spirit
Amen.
to do what He's here to do.
Amen.
And I'm gonna hope not to cry. But so so I remember asking my mom. I came back to Warsaw a few years ago for my grandmother's funeral, and I asked my mom. I was like, "What's one thing that you're always gonna be thankful for your mom for?" And she said, "You know what? I'm thankful my mom didn't abort me because she told me so many times that she should have." And so, and that's from my mom's side. And on my dad's side, it's a different era. But his father, when he was 5 years old, his mom died, and then his dad wanted to get remarried to a different woman, and she gave my great grandfather the conditions that he had to give up his sons, so that her daughters could move into the house. So my dad's dad became an orphan, even though his dad was alive. And then his dad brought his older brother back to the home, but not him. So so both sides of my family had these deep issues, and just immense unconditional love for each other. But so it meant that like the relationship skills, like the really tactical fine point of how you execute unconditional love, like was lacking. And so I get to this point where my life had been perfect. And, and then I lose everything that I'd ever hoped for and worked for. It's really hard. It was really hard. And I found myself alone without the skills to connect, to articulate what I need, um, to look for for help in other people. And I was scared. And so the easier thing for me to do was to numb all that negative emotion. The girl that I left my soccer dream for left me like 2 months into school. So so thank God I had my soccer teammates, but more so, I had ways to numb it. So, I got into I'd never done a single drug before I went to college, and then after year 1, I'd done most of them. And so it's terribly painful to get there. So anyway, on the outside, getting a 4.0 in college. Um, I'm getting honors for for playing soccer. I was on the board of athletes and the administration where they get to choose a few representatives. I got really good at faking it. I was teaching little kids how to speak Spanish. I'm there was still I was just split into two different people basically. There was the good side of me that had goals and that wanted to help people, and then there was the darker side of me that wanted to isolate instead of feel pain and numb and do things that I knew weren't healthy for myself. So
Man, Riley, thanks for sharing that. Man, when you were in college, were you at that level, that stage, aware of some of the family dynamics, or was that something that you asked your mom later on? At what stage were the questions
yeah, no,
to your
I
mom?
I wasn't aware of any of that.
Really? So
No,
you're carrying things you don't even know you're carrying.
right, right. I mean, I bet a lot of people.
That's exactly the beauty of that moment right there, man. Like we carry these heavy, heavy weights and this pain that most of us don't even realize we're carrying. Some of it transfers down the generations invisibly or intangibly, and we're carrying it. And man, it was beautiful to hear you just say what I think we all feel and know. It's like, and I don't have the coping skills to ask for what I need because I'm not even sure what's stirring and triggering. And it ends up feeling like there's just something perpetually wrong with me. And there's shame, and it's like, and no one else gets it because everyone else seems fine, and yet we're all carrying it's man, thank you for the freedom, even I think that's bringing to man, those of us sitting here in this room and those who will be hearing this. Um, I pray for years to come. Um, so did you successfully make your way through uh college and soccer with this burden that you're carrying and the way you're choosing to numb, or did that kind of catch up with you as it sometimes can?
Yeah. Well, it caught up with me.
Yeah.
Thank God, but it caught up with me. Like I said, I went from,
Man, if we that's a whole other podcast. The whole like it caught up with me, thank God. Because the alternative,
yeah,
brutal. But man, sorry.
the
That's so
alternative is a meaningless existence
exactly
for
right.
me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it caught up with me really quickly. I went from, never drinking or doing any kind of drugs to just being addicted.
Mm.
And so I ended up getting arrested 11 times in 2 years. And I ended up getting kicked out of that school in a really sad and painful way. Um, the president, after my sophomore year, because I was on the board of
Mhm.
athletes, came to me and he was like, "Hey man, I think you really need to get some therapy and address these issues. You keep getting arrested." And I told him, I said, "Dr. Nichols, I'll do what's needed, but you can count on me to come back and be fine." And so came back. I was captain of the soccer team again,
You did
revving it up again.
really?
Yeah, I mean, like snorting cocaine on my way up to
Amazing.
in the car by myself on the way up to training camp. I mean, I was just so hurt and lost, and anyway, I ended up I used all of my relational equity to get myself back in there, and so when I got a DUI on campus about 3 weeks into school, um, they banned me. Like rather than just saying, you can't, you're expelled for this year, this semester, they banned me
From campus.
from campus. So, so that was terrible. And then that was about 2 weeks before my 21st birthday. So I end up coming home for my 21st birthday. I already had 2 DUIs. You know, I it's normal to want to drink on your birthday. Like I wanted to go out to drink on my birthday. Nobody, unsurprisingly, wanted to drink with me on my birthday. So I ended up drinking by myself alone, and then I ended up drinking by myself alone every day for months, just playing video games, and just feeling like nothing was ever gonna happen with my life. Just feeling so lost. Just feeling like I didn't, I couldn't find myself, or I couldn't find reality. I couldn't find a foothold. You know, yeah, it was a
Amazing.
terribly dark time,
Amazing. Um,
and it was in that time
yeah.
and it was that exact time period when my parents found this trip to Honduras.
Which is again, because I'm like, we're sitting here though. We're sitting here.
Yeah, right. It
So
didn't end.
man, something and I heard that you went to you went to Honduras and your first trip to Honduras wasn't like man, I'm so excited to go. Everybody, let's go. I mean, I've been waiting on this. Almost, I'm not going to call it blackmail necessarily, but you went a little bit under duress, which is, I love that. And I love it because all the stories of the Bible that I read are a lot of reluctant first steps. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, leave my, and go where? I don't want to do that. But you didn't go necessarily because you're excited to go the first time.
So I recruit people to go on trips all the time
Yeah.
to Honduras.
You do now, right?
I do
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
and so I tell them my honest story. Like nobody that I have ever met was more reluctant than I was that
I
first
love
trip.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I outright didn't want to go,
Yeah.
and I defiantly would tell my parents this, but my dad used the parental influence that he had to throw me a lifeline. And
Mm.
even though I didn't want it, was trying to like
Right.
throw it back in his face. Like he's such a good dad.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up going to Honduras for the first time.
That's incredible.
I really didn't want to go. And I was so ready to criticize
Yeah.
everybody who was going and every part of what we were doing, which God uses everything. That ended up being a gift too. But
I love that. That is the best. So you go there because you're so right. Because I'm a parent, I have kids. Like when my kids don't want to go somewhere, they are in sabotage mode, man. Like, and so for them to enjoy anything, that's a miracle in and of itself. And so you go. I love what you're saying. Like I went there walls up. Like I was ready to be like, told you so. And again, here you are. So, man, a reluctant, walls up, sabotage mode passenger to Honduras. You saw something like had to have.
yeah.
What was that?
Yeah. Well, we were chatting before we started recording. And I told you that there have just been some moments where I've felt like not so much a vision, but where I felt like God has downloaded
Mm,
the reality of a scenario
yeah.
into my heart. And as soon as I got to Honduras, I went to this first village, and within 15 minutes from the airport, I still go there, and I got there, and a man was laying down. He'd had his leg macheted, and and I could speak a little bit of Spanish at that point, enough to understand what was going on. And I realized immediately. I looked around at the community and at the people there, and I was like, "Yep, I have won the birth lottery." I have not ever been thankful. I have not ever told my parents how much they meant to me or how much they've given to me meant to me or how hard they've worked and all the generations of our family. I've never been thankful for a second, but now I realize I have been given something of immense value that I have never been thankful for, and now I'm going to be thankful for it. This is crazy.
Yeah, birth lottery is an interesting term or phrase. One I'm not very familiar with, but the moment you say it, it carries this very vivid image. And so you're there, and there's something in you that's struck by the fact that, man, we don't all start out the same, but yet none of us got to choose this. This is chosen for us, which I'm sure just affects a perspective on humanity. Like when I'm tempted to be like, I'm a little better than you, or I'm a little richer than you, I have more opportunities than you. And those people, I love that idea. And you just remember it kind of being downloaded into you.
In a moment. I mean, in a moment, in a literal moment, I went from being completely disinterested to I certainly wasn't on board
Yeah.
at all, but I was 100% invested.
Mm,
I was there to care for at that point.
amazing. So, would you say that moment was the catalyst? Would you say that moment was what that first trip was all about? Or was that, no, that was just part of the first moment? I saw more of what it looks like for folks who are underserved and don't have as many perks and privileges as you do.
Hmm.
Like what else? What else did you see? You had to have seen some other things. So there's a machete
Oh
dude. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So the first trip, I was there for 7 nights, 8 days. It was I think a pretty normal North American. At that point, they were called missions trips, not
Yeah.
service trips. So you
Hmm.
so you were going and you were trying to change people's ideas, and,
Interesting.
and I found that to be incredibly impractical. I'm looking
That's
at
so interesting.
so I
Yeah.
came I come from all I cared about was business and sports. That's it. Very clear goals. Um, and for a sports team, you take care of your fans. For a business, you take care of your customers. For a nonprofit or for a government, I'm like, all right, who's taking care of their customers? And so like I told you, I got really invested. And so I decided to move to Honduras the next year. I decided because I had this investment banking job in
Yeah.
hand, I had a signing bonus. I could do, I could have done whatever I wanted. And I just thank God he caught my heart. I didn't even believe in him at that point. And I didn't, and I wasn't doing any of this like for spiritual reasons or for God. I was doing it, man, and it even impacts me now thinking about saying it. There's hungry kids. There are people just there are people whose lives are not going to be anything near what they could have been. And like that's worth a fight. And so anyway, in that moment, the need for that fight caught my heart and brought me back.
Incredible. And your trip back, at that point, you were thinking legitimately of boots on the ground, living among the Hondurans. Was there kind of a clear picture of what your impact would look like?
Well, at that point, it still didn't seem like it was my thing. It
Interesting.
seemed like it was just a curiosity. It seemed like I know myself. I know that I've got these demons. And I know that I have this money and this time. So I could either go to Honduras and, try to do something somewhat noble, somewhat valuable, or I could waste all my money and party and create a bunch of bad memories. Like I knew these things. And so I just chose to follow my curiosity to go to Honduras. I knew I had my job starting, 5 months later. So it didn't feel like my thing, didn't feel like a commitment.
Mm,
Um, and so that was it. I just
yeah.
moved, and so the stories. So I get down there day one. I'm volunteering for this Honduran nonprofit led by Honduran men, And they're like, "Oh, we got this gringo." So they send me out to the mountain, to this guy's father-in-law's mountain, day one, with a machete. And the guy drops me off there, and he's like, "All right, you're gonna need to mow this mountainside
With a
with
machete.
a machete, and then I'll come back and get you."
Come
And
on.
I'm not a believer, and this is a Christian nonprofit, and so this is day one.
No
Well, actually,
way.
day one I went and bought an air conditioner. This is day
Yeah.
two. This is day two. So
Priorities. Priorities. Yeah, yeah.
so day two, I go out there, and I'm like 22 years old, so I'm not at the height of my wisdom. So I got really thirsty. The dude didn't come back until 5 p.m. So probably like 1 p.m. or so, I ended up trying to filter river water through my shirt. And I got so sick. I got so sick. I got Giardia. I got so sick that I remember probably 24 hours after that thinking like, yep, this is how people die of dysentery. This is how people die from this kind of stuff, because I feel close. I didn't have a roommate. I told you I couldn't speak Spanish. I didn't have much relational skill at that point, by myself. But thankfully, this guy Elvis came and checked on me. This Honduran guy named Elvis, and ended up getting me the medication I need. But that was my start.
That's crazy.
And
That's crazy.
so once I healed up, the next thing they're like, "Oh, you got a finance degree? Let's go have you build a building by yourself." So they
Oh,
wanted to they wanted to build
soccer and finance, perfect. Go build a building.
So they wanted me to build this little structure where they could feed kids from, and I built it, but then it fell down the next day, literally.
That's amazing.
I'd never had any.
Yeah.
So those are my first two. I felt really unsuccessful.
Yeah.
I ended up getting fired by the nonprofit that I was volunteering for free, because I did, because I thought that they were doing a crappy job, and I kept
And you let them know.
and I let them know. I'm like, "You're gonna be here. You're gonna take donated money for impoverished people and not do anything with it, and you're gonna feel good about it. That's fine. I could never do that. I would."
Wow.
And so, a few weeks in, they let me go.
So the reluctant kid is now advocating for the Hondurans and what justice looks like and what working well looks like. And you're calling out other non-profits. Well, hang on a second. I'll come back to that. But they put you up, like, is this a Mr. Miyagi situation? Like, they put you up on a mountain, hill, whatever, and I like, use this machete. Was that a test? Was it a rite of passage? Was it initiation? Or is it really just like, no, that's the help we need?
I honestly think at this point
Yeah.
that is just a little bit of fun. Like, they were just having
That's what I'm wondering. Like,
they were
this
just
sounds like
having
a
some fun.
hazing situation.
They were just having some fun. They didn't consider that it could have caused me some serious
Absolutely.
physical harm long term.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Because to me, there's almost like, here's this guy, he's here to help. Like, how much does he mean it? But so you have that experience, you get sick and you get fired from essentially a volunteer role. Like, this is your experience
This is my
in
start.
Honduras.
This is my
I
start.
don't know, man. I mean, but typical stories, people are like, I'm not going back. Like, if anything, this is a sign from the Lord that he does not want me here.
I didn't believe in the
And
Lord yet at that
and
point.
yet you decided that for you,
So
it's
that
a
option
different
was
thing.
off the
That
table.
So yeah, something kept you going nonetheless.
Well, at the end of that time, I thought, I'm an idiot, and I'm never gonna do this again. This was stupid. And I just left all of it, and I left all of it. Thought I would never think about it again.
Interesting.
And I went into investment banking. So in August, I was living of that year, 2007. I was living in Honduras, and then in September, I was living in Philly and managing $1 billion from 1 month to
Two
another.
different worlds.
And once I got to Philly, I just left all of Honduras in my memory with a lot of resentment, and said,
Really?
I'm not ever going back there.
Okay, so there's has to be a download coming up. There has to be a redirect coming up. And I love,
Yeah.
by the way, how you started by saying earlier, growing up in Warsaw, Indiana, even as a little kid. I love that, man. I mean, I wish we could talk about that for days, about how I do believe when we are very young, Lord deposits, whether we know him or not, just deposits little hints and little pieces. It's amazing that you had an international sense as a kid in Warsaw, of all places. And so you go to Honduras, that doesn't work the way you thought it would. Investment banking, lots of money. And then what happened? What happened next? Because you were done at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so as I see my story now,
Mm,
um, I try, like, I don't know if this is the gift that God has given me, but it's the one that I constantly ask for. And I believe that if he hasn't yet, he's given it to me little by little. But I want to be like David. I want to be a man after God's own heart. And, you know, my heart got so crushed when I was young with the soccer thing. I put everything I had into that, and I lost it. And then and then the first girlfriend, and then I had a second girlfriend, and that went even worse. Both of them were unfaithful,
mm,
and then after that, it was like I had no heart left. And and then addiction numbed, I guess, whatever small part of it was left. So no part of me was being led by my eternal side or like my grounded or true side. And all of it was just being led by my shallower side. And so, the story that we're all told here is follow your dreams, you can be anything.
yeah.
And so, when I started to take that to heart in the toughest period of time in my life, I was really unstable. I told you I was drinking in my bedroom playing video games all day. And so what I decided in my drinking and playing video games all day phase was I'm going to be the richest, most powerful, wealthy person that I can be. And that's what I started pursuing with all of my heart, with all of my broken heart. And so, I mean, that was my goal. And that's what I would spend. I mean, Indiana taught me to work hard. I worked
Yeah.
I worked really hard at that. I worked from at least 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. at that every single day. And then, but outside of that, I had I had issues I needed to numb. I had so much pain coming from that broken heart. So, so outside of work, it was always drinking or smoking, and then and still setting goals. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I want this part to get better, and I want this part. I want to make more money. I want to sell this thing, and then it was after about 3 years of that that I had a great day. Went out to, as you know, I'm from Warsaw, Indiana. Went out to a dinner where somebody bought like a $10,000 bottle of wine. And so it was one of the fanciest dinners that I'd ever gone to at that point. And we had a ton of leftovers. And so my Midwestern self says, I'm definitely not going to let leftovers from Budokan go to waste. Like, I'm going to take those. I'm going to take those home, or I'm
Yeah.
going to,
The doggy bag it for sure.
yeah. And so I ended up walking home. It was in Center City, Philly. And I was living in Center City. I ended up walking home with these leftovers. Saw this homeless guy, a person who's experiencing homelessness, sitting on a corner. I was like, "Hey man, you ever had food from Budokan?" And because I still, even my broken heart,
Yeah,
had this
absolutely. Still
peace.
there.
And so he was really like, we had a moment. He's like, "Man, I never would have been able to eat at Budokan if it wasn't for you. Thank you." He's like, "I don't have any way to thank you, but I have this crack if you want to smoke it with me." And so it went from being my best day professionally to then I smoked crack with this guy that I was just trying to be nice to. And the combination of like hitting my goals,
Yeah.
but feeling like a broken and a worthless person. This message from the enemy that like I need to be ashamed of who I am.
Mm,
And that
yeah.
felt like it broke me. It felt like it broke me so much that I couldn't hardly consider going on anymore. And so,
Really.
I felt so sad and just like irredeemable. I feel like I would never come back. I felt like I was just bad to my core. And so at that point, I'm like, all right, and this is dark stuff. But but here I am today. This was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so at that point, I'm thinking like, well, can't consider going, can't see how I could keep going on. Like I'm gonna have to start picturing ways to end it, and then like a flash, what used to be a nightmare, this Honduras story, flashed in my eyes, and I was like, oh yeah, I thought what they were doing there was broken. I thought that I was given a solution. Like it could be better and it would only need these six things.
No
Like,
way.
yeah, what
Download in a flash.
immediately in that moment. It was like everything that I had taken in Honduras during those two trips coalesced into a download into my heart, like right in that moment. Like the day after I'd smoked crack with a homeless guy. And like immediately. Um, like it was almost once I slept and sobered up that I could either consider, the path of darkness where my life
Absolutely.
would end, or the path of something. Like I didn't even know what I would have called it back then because I didn't want to go down that road. I didn't want to serve anybody. I never would have. I never would have thought that I could have had like a life of meaning outside of money. And so I just didn't think this was for me. And I did, and because of that, I thought there was just no way that like I could be a person who serves. And so for that reason, I felt no wait, like this doesn't need to be successful. This probably isn't even mine, but I'll give it a shot.
Really?
Yeah. And so it was what I was given was the six pillars that H&H still sits
Yes.
on. This idea of treating in a nonprofit the people who benefit from your programs, treating them like shareholders or customers rather than just beneficiaries.
Mm.
And then the last and probably most important is listening. Like it's such a fundamental element of business or anything relational to listen and have it be mutual or mutuality and equality be there. And in nonprofits, like there was none of that. And I was like, all right, these are the three things that I got. I'm gonna give this a shot. Hopefully, I'll build it well enough that some unlucky fool
Can take
will
it
be a
and run with it.
will be the
Can run
seed.
with it.
Yeah, like the idea is good
Yeah.
enough that some fool will take it. And yeah, and that's how I got started.
But you're in Philly at that time. And so there's obviously this journey, but man, whew, I feel like I could just sit in that for a moment. Like just the incredible crossroads of I feel broken, I feel worthless, I don't feel like I can do. And the Lord is, oh yeah, here, I'm going to download something into your soul right now that is going to bring hope, that is going to bring healing, that is going to, I mean, these things are happening at the same time. To me is just such a beautiful thing. And again, Riley, the excuse for anyone who's like, yeah, God can't use me. I've done too much of this. I've done this. I'm like, yeah, shut up and talk to Riley, right? Like just such an incredible man, an incredible thing. And you're not even like, oh, I'm a surrendered follower of Jesus
I
at
wasn't a
this point
believer
in
yet. No,
time.
I wasn't.
And he's still downloading stuff. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's easy for me to sing in church. Like it's I wake up every day with a lot of thankfulness.
That's amazing.
This is not where I pictured myself.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, when I would visualize my life in my 20s where I am right now, I thought I might be dead. I thought I'd be the wealthiest person that anybody who met me ever knew, but I thought I might be dead. And so,
He had better plans. So what's the line that there's no direct plane ride. Maybe there is from Philly to Honduras, but what was the what was the line that took you out of the world of finance and investment into stepping into not just the Lord downloaded this, but I'm the poor soul who may need to lead the very things that God gave me.
yeah. Um Well, this is probably like some of the most practical advice that I'll have, but it's one step at a time.
Mm,
Just little by little.
mhm.
I kept a full-time job and the nonprofit
You
stuff
did.
for 4 years. And so for the beginning,
Yeah.
I was the biggest donor. Um, I would go down there. I would save all of my vacation every year to go down to Honduras. Um, spent yeah, my weekends like trying to fundraise. Um, it just felt like so alive, you know, and it just felt like the only thing good that I'd really hardly ever participated in as
Beautiful.
an adult,
Yeah.
other than maybe sports.
Yeah.
And so,
So it was step by step. It wasn't this massive and I sold everything and I went all in.
no,
It was these small steps,
yeah,
which again is a beautiful practical reminder
yeah,
that saying yes to making a difference isn't always these massive sweeping things. It's what's the next step? What's the next thing you can do, which is incredible.
yeah. So I had that terrible night and then the experience the next day
Yeah.
where God downloaded the idea for humanity and hope into my heart. And then a month later, so right then I signed up for a missions trip with the same group that I'd gone down with the first time. I was like, I'm gonna see like if I still feel as angry as I did the first time. And I
Amazing.
love these guys.
Yeah.
Like Josh Krill
Yeah.
is a mentor to me.
Mm.
Joe Wilkie,
Yeah. Oh my word.
love that guy.
Yes.
I'm beyond thankful to these guys.
Yeah.
But anyway, um, so I want to go on this mission trip. I still feel the same passion, and so I get back home and I'm like, man, I need somebody to do the paperwork. I can't do all these
Yeah.
forms. So I started talking to people. I'm like, hey, I got this idea. You want to come down to Honduras with me over Labor Day? You could be you could be the co-founder if you want. And so yeah, and they were really, I mean, in the beginning, I had really low shooting percentages. So I probably asked 30 people and one of them said yeah, and I was like, it's a yes. So then I went down to Honduras and wanted to present. Since I'd spent a summer there, I knew enough people that I thought I could present this idea to a few people. And it was probably 10 or 11 or 12. Most of them were like, hey, you're a nice guy, so I need to tell you this is a terrible idea.
No way.
you should definitely not do this. And then another guy who I later found out maybe wasn't even being honest with me,
Yeah.
but just needed a job, was like, yeah, there's a chance that could work. We could do that. And so that's how it started. It's just one little tiny step at a time. None of them felt like they were even going to work.
Oh man, that it's crazy. That's some of the most encouraging stuff I've heard. Like, so it wasn't God downloaded it, and then man, I invited people, and everybody, the army of yeses was large and excited. It's like, no, most people are like, it's all right, but no, I'm not in. And you kept walking, believing that whatever was downloaded into you was like, no, I still think there's something here, even though it was more no's than yeses. You still felt compelled to keep moving. That's amazing to me.
What I've realized is that I'm the kind of person that when I get a vision or a download
Mm,
of something uniquely better, like it stands alone, like there's nothing else really like it, and it's distinct because it just improves things.
yeah,
Like I'm in it for that. Even if it
yeah,
doesn't work out. Like that's what the good fight's all about. And so that's what I had for
yeah.
humanity and hope in the very beginning. And man, there was probably a decade where it seemed way more likely that it wasn't gonna
What was
be
it
a
gonna take?
profession or be a
Yeah,
job or even this idea.
yeah.
So my idea with humanity and hope is that there's a birth lottery, and that with this strategy, which is uh, a mindset that the Bible calls hope, an anchor for the soul.
Mm,
When you define it, it's what you believe plus how you act.
mm,
Psychology breaks it down into goals, agency, and pathways.
mm.
And so my idea is that when you shine this mindset at areas, entire communities that have lost the birth lottery, that in one generation you can go from people that place near 0% to people that have all the options in the world at their disposal. Um, and uh, I just really believed in it.
Mm.
I believed in it with all of me, and what I realized since then is that I wasn't very humble. So maybe even God sent this to just
Mm.
save me. Maybe it was
Mm.
only for me. Um, but it's not. I think it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Man, so here you are. 2023. We're now in 24, but the 2023 season, I mean, it's 5 communities, these 6 pillars. Like you are seeing the Philly download being realized, making a real difference. I'm curious to know from your perspective, is there something that feels, let's take 2023 as an example of the many things that are happening, like the jobs that are being provided. And I saw something which was striking to me, that there is now a medical professional resident in each of those 5 communities. That's crazy.
Well, we train people from the communities to be a medical professional. Like we don't move medical professionals in there.
That's crazy because, man, I'm telling you, I grew up in, third world, developing world, Zambia, and I still remember the number of teams that would come to our country, well-meaning, the kind of people that I think you yelled at. Um, they would come with every intention to make a difference and to deliver um, these really helpful things or facilities or amenities, and then they'll do all of these things for our people, and everybody would be excited. And then they would jump on a plane, and then they would leave, and then things would stop working, or there were questions, but we don't know. They've gone. Does anyone know how it works? And then everything would just fizzle out, and what would be created is like, oh man, we can't wait for the next time these people come to save us, to help us. When I heard about y'all and how insistent you are on empowering the Honduras. Like, if this is going to be sustainable, we've got to get it into their hands. And now I'm listening to you talk about like birth lottery. I don't feel like I'm better than anybody. You talking about, oh, no, 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 no. It's really about empowering the people and partnering together and listening as if you have as valuable a piece of input as I do. And there's this equality. And I'm like, for real. And I'm, God, please blow the lid off of this thing. But all that to say, listening to that, the medical professional who are Hondurans trained to be in their communities, that's like ingredients to sustainability, which I hope kind of spreads around every single organization that hopes to make a difference in the world. So anyway, I asked you what was most exciting to you, and then I'm like talking about what's most exciting to me. Like,
Let's
I
go.
don't know,
Let's
man.
go.
Like,
I'm here for it.
but what's firing you up right now? And maybe it's something that we don't know about because it's on the brink. But what was most exciting for you about the 23 season?
Yeah. Well, that's easy
Mm.
for me. Um, One of the things that I've been most excited about is so communities that produce people who've lost the birth lottery, there's always certain signs. You're ending your education early. You're entering the workforce early and you're getting paid a lot less than what's average in your country. Um, and then all kinds of, if you're able to talk to people in detail and understand what they believe about the quality of their own life, then it's obvious where people have lost the birth lottery. What I'm most excited about is when an entire community doesn't just get lucky one time and like not one person hits the birth lottery, but when it becomes the norm. And
Mm.
so like when communities that used to just produce this and this and this and this and it's all stuck and nobody's got a win, nobody's got a success story. Like there's nobody that they're like community tales about or legends. Like there's no, oh, like that person did this thing. Um, I've always been hoping for that day where we'd get one, and then the next day where we'd get like a whole class. And in 2023, we got our first one, from a community that had never produced anybody who graduated high school or university. They'd never had a success story. They got their first one. And she's a beauty stylist now. She works in the city. She's renting her own spot. Like she's hoping to open her own locale. Um, and she's a professional, and she's still living in her community. And in 2025, like this year, two more are going to
Mm,
graduate.
mm.
And then in 2025, we got our first class of 10
Come on.
coming from that community. And I'm like,
Come
oh my
on.
God. Oh, this is real. Like
It's happening.
yeah, this can really happen. Places that were so stuck. Like I spent, a
Come
quarter
on,
of my life
man.
just hoping this was real. And so I started to see that in 2023. And I'm like, man, so on my 10 year, so
Incredible.
some of this was so hard that I'm just like, God, help me figure out how to stay. On my 10 year, he gave me this word is just keep showing up. Keep
Mm.
showing up. And so I get to that point and I'm like, I just kept showing up. Here we go. Like I get to reap the rewards of just seeing what happens to these communities. Because now I'm dreaming about, all right, we got
Like I got
we
a
got
taste, Lord.
we got
Yeah,
10.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
what about their kids? What if we can keep
Mm.
our what if we can make it so that we have a strong board of directors, so that we have values that are clear to everybody? Everybody holds them. We've got a vision that everybody stands by. We've all got goals that we're rallying around both this year and for the future. I'm like, all right, what if their kids can do that? So seeing this group of 10 that's coming and seeing the first one actually graduate was this year or in 2023. What It was really exciting.
Come on. Come on. Can we just throw stuff like, man?
I want
I just want to flip a table, throw a mic or something, man. That's insane. That's amazing to hear. That's amazing to hear. And I can imagine how much more for you who are living and seeing this vision like realize. Because sometimes it is, you hear stories about, this guy came and then 30 years after he passed away, you start to see some of the fruit, and you are talking about, you are watching it happen, you're seeing the fruit, you're seeing the impact, you can see it coming up here in a little bit. And man, the parallels with, you talk about the birth lottery, and you talk about equality, and you talk about humanity, and you talk about hope, and I'm like, this to me gives me chills. Even the beautiful, vulnerable pieces of your story about, like, man, this happened to my mom's side of the family. This was true about my dad's side of the family. This was true about some of the wounds that I carried. This was true about some of the journey of my life, my education ending early, and me jumping into the workforce sooner. Like, it is amazing. Like, oh, our stories and some of the parallels. And then I got arrested with hope, and then things were different for me. And seeing, just to me, even some of the shared elements and aspects of the stories that you now get to speak into and get to be a part of. But man, praise God, that is insane. And all right, I'm going to stop just geeking out on the gloriousness of all of this. But if somebody goes to your website, um, and I dare anyone and everyone to do it, like goes to your website, one of the things that struck me was there is a staff now, there is a board now. And if you look at the staff, I'm like, there's like maybe 2.5 gringos. The rest are like
Yeah.
Hondurans.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is so unheard of. It's not like, oh, we're coming and we believe we're the more gifted, and you are surrounded in the equality. So you are living these very things that you are saying. And it's just, it's beautiful to see, man. It's beautiful to see. And I hope everyone kind of peers in on it and is encouraged, inspired by it. There's this for-profit side though, like Generous Coffee, maybe tell us a little bit about that because you're a part of that. I know there's like a place
There's
in
a
town
generous
now.
coffee shop here in
Yeah,
Warsaw.
coffee
It's
shop
got
here in
great
town,
coffee.
and Tyler Sylvius and Ben Higgins, and there's like, what's up with that?
Well, so in the effort to do good
Mm,
and to encourage people to do good without over spiritualizing it, we created a call. Well, in my mind, it's call to action: give, go, buy. Like if you want to make somebody's life better, um, you could give something, you could go somewhere and serve them, or you could buy something that gives back to somebody. And so the idea was to create an option under the same umbrella of people to do all three. And so if you want to do altruism through giving or through service trips, that's humanity and hope. But then the buy option is generous coffee. And generous now, that's where the idea started. It's matured since then. Now generous gives away 100% of its profits, or else it would be inconsistent with the name. And it gives them to, I think we've given money to over 100 nonprofits in the last 7 years. And I don't even think we give money to humanity and hope anymore, or at least not, it's not the biggest beneficiary. We do 4 title beneficiaries every year. Um, just to kind of, Ben Higgins was on The Bachelor, and he's got a lot of social media capital. So he wants to be really mindful to use the star power, celebrity power he has to get the word out about all kinds of causes that are really, really valuable, like H&H, but just don't get a whole bunch of press.
that's that's amazing. And yes, Ben Higgins from Warsaw won The Bachelor. Can we talk about Mason and Miles Plumley from Warsaw? NBA. Can we talk about Riley Fuller from Warsaw? I'm just saying, I love the stories. We're proud of where we're from, and so I want to go back and ask about your own encounter with Jesus. Where in the timeline was was that?
Yeah, I love this story. So it's 2013. You guys know up until 2010 when I started Humanity and Hope, I mean, it was a struggle. And then so from 2010 to 2013, I'm like trying to be a good person for the first time, but I don't have any spiritual foundation. So it's like all effort. And I got a lot of effort to put into stuff in life. So I just felt so torn between extremes. And then I told you I got fired from my job in 2013 because I got into a political battle with somebody with a lot more power than I had.
Really?
Uh huh. Um, I can't approach my work dishonestly, and I had done.
I'm learning there's a prophetic side to you, man.
and,
You
I,
see something,
and I'd done a
you're
ton of
gonna
work
speak.
on this thing.
Yeah.
It's so silly. It was to try to get more Latino participation in retirement plans because they knew about my work in Honduras. So they're like, hey, work with McKinsey, this good consulting
Yeah.
firm, to figure out how to get more Latinos into our retirement plan, and then go present it to the CEO. And so I did a year's worth of work. My boss changed the recommendations at the end, and I was here in Indiana, and the meeting was in New York right after 4th of July. And I was like, I'm just not going to go. You can present it by yourself. And so he fired me after that. And then
Because they changed the
because they
plan.
changed my recommendations, yeah. And then
Mm,
a month after that, my girlfriend and I broke up,
mm.
who's now my wife. So that story ends a lot better than the first one. But she and I broke up. And so I left Texas, moved back to Indiana, and I'd lost everything. I was 29. I'd lost my job. I'd lost my girlfriend. I'd lost my place to live. I didn't have a car anymore. Felt like I did when I got kicked out of college. Just drinking by myself, playing video games. Except this time I was trying to start Humanity and Hope. And I remember Thanksgiving, I had a flight and it got canceled. So I love to read. I read through everything I had. The next day when it got rescheduled, the only thing that I had was this Tony Dungy devotional book that my dad had downloaded for me. So I'm struggling, and I'm like, man, I'm not going to read this thing. I was like, but he's a football coach. So I end up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I ended up opening it. And I believe it was the first verse that I read. And it was the verse where it says that God is love. He doesn't have love. He doesn't show love. Like, he is love himself. And for
Mm.
whatever reason, I may have even read that before, but when I read that in that moment, I was like, oh, like that's what I've been so desperately
Unbelievable.
searching for.
Come on.
And so in that
Come
moment,
on.
I read that verse and I had no walls. I was like, yep, that's it. And so by myself on the airplane, I felt like I knew how to be like, God, I want to be yours. I want to follow you. And I've been all in since that moment.
That's amazing to me, man. So just even to me, some of the key moments of your stories, how he met you. I was alone and I was believing this. I was alone and this was downloaded. I was alone and I was wrestling and I was playing video games and I was, drinking, and I was alone and I'm reading this Tony Dungy thing, and I was alone on a plane and he showed up. God is love. That was the eternal download that changed everything for you. Walls down.
And I still, like, I think freedom comes from truth. Truth is knowledge. Knowledge is the way we live, not just the way we think.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was a beautiful moment.
Yes, some
but
catching up
we've
to
got
do.
11
Yeah.
years. Like, it took
Yeah.
a long time to know the freedom.
Yes.
Um,
Man. Woo! Okay. So we should let you go, but I'm sorry. So you broke up with your wife. Like, that feels like that, that feels like something, if you're willing to share. But
yeah. My wife and I have fought hard for our marriage, and now we're best friends and genuinely love each other, like with feelings, and not just devotion.
come on, man.
But
We're trying
that
to
was
wrap this
not- that was
conversation. This
not-
is not helping, because that's good stuff, man. Preach to all of you considering marriage and thinking it's all about feelings.
Hey, if you're already
work.
married, just
Yeah.
do the hard work. That's what I mean. It can be really hard.
Which again is interesting about your work with Honduras, but in love and relationships as well. You said, man, the Lord repeated to you, just keep showing up. Like, it's work.
Yeah.
And it applies to parenting, it applies to relationships. But man, I'm sorry. So you guys have done work. You're great friends now. You're saying
Yeah.
best friends now.
Yeah. So she comes from a family, both her parents are from Iran. She didn't have a guide in this country. She always felt alone. Struggles fitting in, etc. My story.
Yeah.
So that when the times got tough, it just made it hard for us to be emotionally regulated enough to actually communicate, rather than just throw daggers. So when we broke up, it was because I've never told this publicly, but she wouldn't have a problem with it. We were arguing so loudly that the police got called to the apartment that we were sharing before we were married. And after that, I was like, it's too dangerous for me, too dangerous for you. Like, the police are getting called. We don't like each other. There's no point. And so that was on my birthday. That was my 29th birthday that all that happened. And so came back up here to Indiana, became a believer on, I think it was November 29th of 2013. And then about 30 days later, I found out that she was pregnant. And so that's how, so then I moved back down to Texas and her family is very conservative, and I was trying to be honest. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to marry your daughter.
Oh, you said that, like the words left your mouth. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, it was terrible. And then my son had to have skull surgery. So we've been through the ringer.
Yeah.
And still here.
That's incredible. And I'm telling you, like, hearing your story, even hearing you say what you just said, it helps remove a little bit of the mystery. Because man, you are an incredible leader, and yet the tenderness has not gone away. Like there is still this you don't lead a movement that is impacting a nation for generations and generations and generations, having walked through what you've walked through. And man, you are still as tender as it gets to hear the different things you've walked through and the ways you view um fellow human beings, your humility, your generosity. It's man, it's a beautiful thing to hear. And hearing your story is so um man, so enlightening, and it helps make sense of it, because otherwise you are a bit of an anomaly to me. Like, wait, why? Like, wait, then you went back. Why would you care? Man, you're doing this. Like, nope, something broke in me. And then, man, I saw the brokenness in other people, and my brokenness and their brokenness and the lottery and God. It's just, it's really beautiful to hear all that, man.
It's a testimony. It's a gift.
Yeah.
Thank you, but it's not. Thanks doesn't go to me.
Yeah.
That's
Which is
yeah,
what I'd expect you to say, which is beautiful as well.
yeah.
And you said that when we started this conversation, like, man, it's all him.
It's that's what gives
Yeah.
me the motivation to be as honest as I am. Just so
Mm,
it's so obvious that all these good things are coming from
come
God.
on.
Because I guarantee there may be more people out there than not that are sitting in shoes where
Yes.
they're like, man, I know my life could be more.
Mm,
I know that God put more power in me. I know God gave me eternal gifts that make me part of the body, part of the vine. It's got to be. So I know people are out there sitting out there in similar spots that I was, and I just want to encourage you that
yeah.
we're all normal, and that
Come on.
it's just plugging into the Holy Spirit that makes these stories so great.
Woo. Um, this was the dream. Riley, thank you. Thank you. I love the fact that, like you just said, there is somebody who's like, I don't know if I can keep going. It's like, I love your story for them. Somebody who's saying, man, I felt like God gave me something, but every step I took felt labored. I'm tempted to quit. Like, I love your story for that. Or, man, I'm seeing something broken in the way the systems are working, but they've done this for forever. Like, I'm just the new guy. I'm here for the first time. Surely I kind of have a better way of. It's like, oh, no, no. Feel free and feel courageous to speak to things that seem broken, you know. And
That's
I
good.
love your story in that. Like, um, um, even what you said about man, generous coffee and the different ways that people can impact. Like, well, no, you can give. Like, you can go. I can't do anything. There's a lot of things you can do. I love your story for that as well. And man, cannot thank you enough for your willingness to share it with us. So those who want to either learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing, or want to get involved, or want to give, what's the best recommendation for them?
I'd say send a personal message over social media, or over the website. Fill out an interest form. Just try to communicate somehow with H&H, and we'll get back to you really quickly, same day.
Amazing.
Still a very small family business. Get in before it gets too hot.
Yes. Riley, thank you. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, for being a part of this conversation. You can make more of a difference than you think, especially as you yield to what it is that God has and He's calling you to. So thanks for tuning in. We will definitely see you next time. Hey, thanks again so much for joining us and being a part of the KondoSpeaks podcast and the Life Stories season powered by Lifesong. If you want to learn more about Lifesong for Orphans, or about any of our guests, or about KondoSpeaks, head to KondoSpeaks.com. Thank you again, and we will see you next time. Now, if you're interested in helping us tell more inspiring stories of real people making a real difference in our world, don't hesitate to reach out, because maybe you or your organization can help us to power the next season. Hey, be sure to visit KondoSpeaks.com to continue the conversation, to access notes, to get additional resources, and to learn more about our sponsor, Lifesong. Kondo Speaks is edited and produced by In the